Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Yeah, let's, I think we can.
सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्री गीता ध्यानम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततैल्यपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रेकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला। अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोतीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननदि कैवर्तककेशवः। पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाभूदितम्। लोके सज्जनषट्परैरहरः पीयमानं मुदा भूयात् भारतपङ्कजं कलिमला तद्वंसि न श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुवन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः। देवाय तस्मै नमः। देवाय तस्मै नमः।
Hari Om. Good to see you, Vasu, on the screen. So, Bhagavan said that one's own duty is better than performing something which is action which is not one's own duty. Swadharma is better than Paradharma, even if it lacks in merit. Even Paradharma that is excellently performed, Swadharma which is lacking in merit is better than the Paradharma which is excellently performed. Swadharmo Shreyan Vigunaha Paradharma Swanushtita. And then he said that to work in any field that is dictated by one's own nature is better. And the understanding is that this is because in that kind of a scenario, there is a much better chance to exhaust our inherent tendencies or our vasanas. And that then contributes to the spiritual growth of the seeker. And of course, when we do something which is aligned to our nature, which is in line with our disposition, which is natural to our disposition, then the performance is also better. That of course is true. But while we do that, we also exhaust our vasanas. And on the contrary, when we perform action and when we actually strive to do so, when you're doing something which is not aligned with one's nature, then the effort is much more. You have to strive because it doesn't come naturally to us. And when we are striving to perform something which is against our own nature, one not only does not expend the existing vasanas, there is a tendency to accumulate more in our temperament. And then in future, we have to exhaust that also. Right? So it actually doubles the effort in terms of spiritual progress. Maybe we'll achieve some material goals, but this is for the spiritual seeker. And a person who performs one's duty, Bhagavan says, na apnoti kilbisham, does not incur sin. Na apnoti does not incur kilbisham, sin. So no additional vasanas and no mental disturbances. Sin is nothing but a mind which is clouded with the impurities, with the Shadripus. Kama, Krodha, Moha, Lobha, Mada, Matsarya, right? So all of these are not there. And when these are not there, additional vasanas do not accumulate. And Bhagavan says that in any case, all undertakings, commencements of any action are surely defective by nature. Sarvarambha hi doshena. And the examples he gives is Dhume Nagnihi Ivavritaha. Like the smoke covers the fire. Dhuma or smoke covers Agni, fire. And a person who performs the duty, for such a person, over a period of time, the personality evolves. And how does this evolution manifest for all to see? Bhagavan gives certain aspects, 5 of them. Asakta buddhihi, free of attachment. The aspect of I want, that aspect which is, that I plus I want, right? That aspect of I want, it goes away. An intellect that is completely detached. Then vigata spriha, when that I want goes away, at that time the person does not have any desires naturally. All desires are completely gone. Nothing, no desire is left. Vigata spriha. Jitatma, such a person conquers the false sense of self. Oftentimes we take our ego to be ourselves, our individuality to be ourselves, our identification with the body, mind and intellect to be the self. This is the false sense of self. And that false sense of self is won over, or you're victorious over that false sense of self, Jitatma. When the I, aspect of I and the aspect of I want, both of them are not there, the aspect of I do, which is the Kartritva, is also not there. That is also conquered. And this then reveals the true self, the supreme self, which is anyway within us and which was veiled by attachments and by desires. That is Jitatma. And for a person who is Asakta Buddhi, Vikata Spriha, Jitatma, for such a person, Sannyasena, giving up through Tyaga. We have studied in detail about Sannyasa and Tyaga, giving up all attachments, all desires, and the aspect of individuality. Naishkarmya, such a person, even when doing, is not in a state of action. While performing action, is actionless. Naishkarmya. And Bhagavan said that he will show the path of perfection through performance of duty. Adhigacchati, that is attaining Paramam Siddhim, supreme perfection. That attainment of perfection through performance of duty, Bhagavan is showing us how to get there. Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda ji has said, and I quote, desiring is the mind gushing towards objects, emotions, thoughts, gratifications. While perfection is the mind totally turned away from all objects, both within and without. Unquote. And what after attaining this kind of a perfection? That Bhagavan covers in the next verse.
Siddhim prapto yata brahma.
Siddhim prapto yatha brahma.
Tatapnoti nibodhame.
Tathapnoti nibodhame.
Samaseneva kaunteya.
Samasenaiva kaunteya.
Nishta jnanasya ya para.
Nishta jnanasya ya para.
Siddhim prapto yata brahma. Tatapnoti nibodhame. Samaseneva kaunteya. Nishta jnanasya ya para.
Nibodha me, nibodha, learn, me, from me. Samasena, in brief, O Kaunteya, son of Kunti. Yatha, how one who praptaha has attained siddhim, perfection, which Bhagavan described through performance of duty. That kind of a person, Iva also apnoti, attains, tad, that, Brahma, Brahman. So one who has attained perfection also attains that Brahman. Learn from me, Bhagavan is saying. Ya, who is, and now he says that Brahman, who is Para, the supreme, Nishtha, consummation, Jnanasya, of knowledge. So Bhagavan says, learn from me in brief, O son of Kunti, how one who has attained perfection also attains that Brahman, who is the supreme consummation of knowledge, the supreme goal or the end of knowledge. After all the knowledge, then what? That end, Bhagavan describes the supreme as. Yatha prapto siddhim, one who has attained perfection, which Bhagavan we had seen in the last satsang, by performance of duty. Attaining perfection through Karma Yoga, repeated performance, daily performance of Karma Yoga, which then leads to Dhyana Yoga. That kind of siddhim. Through that Karma Yoga, the mind and intellect becomes free from all the attachments that we just saw, right? That attainment of that perfection. And the body and the senses are reined in. The control of the sense organs are with this individual. And Bhagavan says, Brahma tathapnoti, attains that Brahman. And that Brahman is what? Nishtha jnanasya yapara, the supreme consummation of knowledge. So that Jnana Yoga which that person has done, who has constantly done Karma Yoga, that person through Jnana Yoga reaches the ultimate destination of that knowledge. And that ultimate destination of that knowledge, that supreme end of that knowledge, is the aspect of dwelling in Brahman through meditation, through Dhyana. So Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Dhyana Yoga. How this person, through all of this has attained perfection, now attains that Brahman. That Bhagavan says, Nibodha me samasena, learn from me in brief. So now we will see the next 3 verses together. All 3 go together. So we will go through verses 51, 52 and 53.
Buddhya vishuddhya yuktaha
Buddhya vishuddhya yuktaha
Dhrityatmanam niyamya cha
dhrityatmanam niyamya cha
Shabdadin vishayam tyaktva
shabdadin vishayan tyaktva
Ragadvesho vyudhasya cha
ragadveshavyudasya cha
Viviktasevi lagvashi
viviktasevi lagvashi
Yatavakaya manasaha
yatavakaya manasaha
Dhyana yoga paro nityam
dhyana yoga paro nityam
Vairagyam samupashritaha
vairagyam samupashritaha
Ahankaram balam darpam
ahankaram balam darpam
Kamam krodam parigraham
kamam krodham parigraham
Vimuchya nirmama shantaha
vimuchya nirmama shantaha
Brahma bhuyaya kalpate
brahma bhuyaya kalpate
Buddhya vishuddhya yuktaha Dhrityatmanam niyamya cha Shabdadin vishayam tyaktva Ragadvesho vyudhasya cha Viviktasevi lagvashi Yatavakaya manasaha Dhyana yoga paro nityam Vairagyam samupashritaha Ahankaram balam darpam Kamam krodam parigraham Vimuchya nirmama shantaha Brahma bhuyaya kalpate.
So yuktaha, endowed with, vishuddhaya, a purified, shuddhaya vishuddhaya, completely purified. The V indicates extreme purity. Buddhya, understanding. Yuktaha, endowed with, vishuddhaya, a purified, buddhya, understanding. Cha, and niyamya, controlling. Atmanam, the self. Dhritya, with dhriti, with perseverance. Tyaktva, relinquishing. Shabdadin, sound and other. Shabda, adin, sound and other. Vishayan, sense objects. Cha, and vyudasya, abandoning. Raga, dvesha, attraction and repulsion. Likes and dislikes. Vivikta sevi, dwelling in solitude. Lagvashi, eating but a little. Yata vak kaya manasaha, the speech, body and mind subdued. Dhyana yogo paro nityam, ever engaged in the yoga of meditation. Dhyana yoga. Samupashritaha, taking refuge in. Vairagyam, dispassion. Vimuchya, the second line of the third verse. Vimuchya, 53rd, forsaking. Ahankaram, egoism. Balam, the power. Darpam, pride. Kamam, desire. Krodham, wrath or anger, actually more than anger, wrath. Parigraham, covetousness. Nirmamaha, without the sense of mind. Shantaha, tranquil. Kalpate, one is. Brahma bhuyaya, fit for the state of Brahman. So Bhagavan is saying, and all three verses go together, right? Endowed with a purified understanding and controlling the self with perseverance, with dhriti, relinquishing sound, shabda, and other sense objects, abandoning attraction and repulsion, dwelling in solitude, eating but a little, speech, mind, and body subdued, ever engaged in the yoga of meditation, dhyana yoga, taking refuge in dispassion, and then forsaking egoism, power, pride, desire, wrath, covetousness, without the sense of mind, tranquil, one is fit for the state of Brahman. So these three verses describe the qualities of a person who is fit for the state of Brahman. Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So the last phrase of the three verses is to be understood first. Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who is, such a person is fit for the state of Brahman. And Bhagwan describes, what do you mean such a person? There are 12 qualities. See, the last 3 chapters we have seen. So lots of description of qualities, but it is very critical to note the context in which some of these qualities, even though if repeated, are described. So these qualities here are belonging to a person who is a perfectionist, one who has attained that perfection, that accomplished yogi that we have studied about in detail. That person who then is seeking the Supreme Brahman. So the context is very clear here. These qualities about that perfectionist. See, this is very, very critical because at any stage in spiritual development, a seeker can slide. You're making this is true for any kind of progress, in our work, in whatever we do. When we climb a mountain, mountaineers, sometimes they lose their foothold and they slide. It takes a tremendous amount of effort, especially when you go to mountains beyond 15 to 20, 15, 16, 17,000 feet. Oxygen is very rare. The strength and perseverance, dhriti, that is required to climb after that is tremendous. And it takes couple of hours to climb, say 100 meters. And then in a flash, you slide 500 meters. Why? Because the foothold slipped. Or you are hanging on a rope and then your foothold slips and you actually start swinging. It is extremely difficult to come back into where you were. So this is that level of criticality in terms of these qualities. That is what we have to understand. Just imagine climbing a mountain at 20,000 feet, climbing Mount Everest, and then you are at 26,000 feet and you slip 1,000 feet. And you have to go through the whole thing all over again. The game Snakes and Ladders, it depicts this beautifully. You go to 99 and then there is a snake which brings you to 6 or 7 or something like that. In fact, there is a beautiful game which describes qualities of spiritual growth in the board of a snake and ladder. And some say that was invented before the snake and ladder, whatever it is, but it's beautiful. It depicts it nicely. So these are extremely important from the perspective of a perfectionist. The samsara or maya, it has tremendous amount of magnetic pull and capability to distract a spiritual seeker. So what is required of a siddha at this stage of spiritual growth and development? One who has attained perfection and is going to get fit to become the state or attain the state of Brahman. Become Brahman or attain the state and all we'll discuss later. But at that level, at that super advanced level, buddhya vishuddhaya yuktaha, endowed with a purified understanding. This siddha is already a jnani, okay? The person knows, has read, very well read, already an accomplished jnani, has completed jnana yoga, at the verge of the end of that path of jnana yoga, which is Brahman. And with this acquired knowledge through jnana yoga, has the capability of understanding the Supreme Self as it is in reality, how it is. Bhagavan will talk about that. And the Supreme Self is the epitome of purity. And to understand that which is the epitome of purity requires an understanding which is pure. That is buddhya vishuddhaya yuktaha. Purified intellect, purified understanding. That is required to understand the pure self. Dhrityatmanam niyamya. Controlling the self with perseverance, with dhriti. See, the self here stands for body, mind, intellect. Controlling that. Not the pure self. We don't have to control the pure self. We have to control our own self, which is veiling the pure self. So even after reaching that level, not permitting to veil the pure self. See, even at this level of evolution, this level of spiritual enhancement, a person can be distracted by the senses and as well as the mind and intellect. These are elements which can distract the person. You are at that stage, at a rush of stimuli, can, get the senses drawn to another object. Or a thought can come which brings in a memory from 20, 30 years ago. Or there can be something that we observed, this person observed, the sage observes, and that creates a sense of judgment, which is the intellect, right? So whether it is the body or the senses which can respond to a rush of stimulus or stimuli, or the mind which can wander in terms of the thoughts and memories, or intellect which can get judgmental, all of these can happen at that stage also. And they must be controlled with dhriti. See, when you go to Tapovan, I'm referring to the place which is beyond Gangotri. So you trek from Gangotri to Gaumukh. Gaumukh is the source of, or the glacier, the glacial source from which the river Ganges emerges. And beyond that, you climb up the mountain and you go to this, at the base of Mount Shivling is a massive plateau at a height of about 17,000 feet. It's called Tapovan. And there lives only one person. People go and come, by the way. A lot of trekkers go, sadhus go, a lot of people visit Tapovan. It's a beautiful plateau at that height. One person lives there, he's called Mon Baba. He must have other names, but commonly referred to as Mon Baba. In a cave he lives. A fantastic human being, worth meeting. Mon Baba, because he lives there alone. So trekking happens, 3 months or 4 months or 5 months in a year. Rest of the 6-7 months, nobody goes there. It's impossible to go there, right? About 6 months plus, you cannot go to Tapovan. So he is actually alone, and because of being alone, he hardly ever talks. It's very difficult for him to talk. So then imagine, so he's been like that for 5 or 6 or 7 months, and then suddenly there is 100 people, trekkers, sadhus, all kinds of people come. So there's a rush of stimuli. Stimuli coming from people, they're talking, trekkers talk a lot. They are eating, they are walking around here and there, and this Baba is sitting there, and suddenly there is sensual stimuli. Suddenly there is opinion. Suddenly there is memories that come forth in his mind. How does this kind of a person respond to all of that? Bhagavan says, Dhrityatmanam niyamya. Controlling with dhriti, that Atma, that self, which is the body, mind, the thoughts, the senses, the thoughts and the judgments, the intellect. Shabdadin Vishayans Tyaktva. Relinquishing sound and other sense object. Adin, other than Shabda. Shabda, sound. What other than sound? Vishaya. Vishaya means the sense objects. So what are they? What are the aspects that give us exposure to the sense objects? Shabda, Sparsha, Rasa, Rupa, Gandha. So sound, touch, taste, form, smell. These are the 5. Not tyaktva, not allowing the sense objects to get converted into perception and then into ripples of thoughts. So again, for this Moni Baba, not allowing all this sudden disturbances, which is in the environment, abandoning or leaving, letting go, tyaktva, relinquishing the sense objects. Because if you don't relinquish, they will come and grab the mind and the intellect. That is why relinquishing. Raga dvesha vyudasya. So abandoning, vyudasya is abandoning. So again, we have read in detail about sannyasa and tyaga, right? Relinquishing in one word, Bhagavan is saying tyaktva, the other he's saying vyudasya. So vyudasya is abandoning. Abandoning what? Raga dvesha, attraction and repulsion. See, likes and dislikes, these are instinctive impulses. Instinctively we like and instinctively we dislike. And these are generated in the intellect, because likes and dislikes are nothing but opinions, judgments. So they come out of the intellect. And Bhagavan is saying that we have to abandon that. These instinctive impulses you have to have. So look at the power that this person has to have. Whatever is instinct also, one needs to control. Control over one's instinct, not just control over choice, control over instinct. Controlling choice is difficult. Controlling instinct is even more difficult. And when this is there, they distort the stability of a seeker. And when the stability is distorted, that creates attraction and repulsion. So that's why likes and dislikes must be given up. Vivikta Sevi, dwelling in solitude. One who revels in the solitary environment. It's like a scientist, who just, you leave the scientist in a lab, that's what they want. They revel in that environment, that quiet of their lab. That kind of a being alone, but not being lonely. So this is also the capability to calm the mind in a crowded, chaotic environment. So one is that you revel when the environment is calm and quiet. So you get locked up in a lab, yes, absolutely. You go to 17,000 feet, when the trekkers are not there, it's calm and quiet. You find a solitary place, absolutely it is calm and quiet. But what when it is not calm and quiet? What if because of your karma you are in the middle of Chandni Chowk, or in the middle of what's the bazaar in Bangalore, right? Right? So in the crowded market, what do you do? See, like a student who is able to focus in a joint family where there is a lot of chaos, a small baby crying, an elder saying something, and you focus on your studies, whereas another student gets distracted in the same environment. So it's the power of being able to create solitude in your own mind. That power is Vivikta Sevi, and reveling in that solitary environment. So irrespective of the environment, if the environment is solitary, awesome, great. If the environment is not, having the ability to create that quietness within your own mind. That is Vivikta Sevi. So then, when I was reading this, you see, mind goes here and there, right? So I was remembering this Bollywood song. Out of the blue, I have not heard this song in ages. But when I read this verse, this song came to mind. And along with the song, Amir Khan also comes to mind. All that should not happen, no? As per what we are reading now, for a person who is a perfectionist, all this should not happen. But I'm not a perfectionist, so it's a beautiful song, by the way, Akele hai to kya gam hai, chahe to hamare bas mein kya nahi, bas ek zara साथ हो तेरा, तेरे तो हैं हम, कब से भगवान, कब से सनम is the song, कब से भगवान, in the case of this achiever. अकेले हैं तो क्या गम है. So imagine, at that pinnacle of spirituality, this is the spirit that, yes, I have that solitary reveling in that solitary aspect. And why? Because I'm filled with the thought of the Supreme, with the thought of Bhagavan, Krishna. I'm filled with that. That Ma Manusmara Yudhyacha is working. That is when you are working with his thought. We'll come to that also, by the way. But here, I'm able to create that quiet in my mind where I'm reveling in your thought, Bhagwan. And the fact that I am yours. So for this person, the solitude in the mind is something like what is diet to the body. And that brings us to the next one, which is Lagvashi. At the body level, eating optimally, neither too much nor too little. Because what happens when you eat too much or too little, there is disturbance. Lethargy when you eat too much or too little. Indigestion when you eat too much or too little. Fatigue when you eat too much or too little. Hunger when you eat too much or too little. Sometimes even when you eat too much, you know, that hunger, just that mental hunger thing gets triggered off and you want to eat more. Already you have eaten too much. The stomach is full. But the mental impulse is to eat more even though you are full. So these aspects of lethargy, indigestion, fatigue, hunger get triggered when you're not eating optimally. This person must eat optimally. And when that happens, lightness of the body and clarity, alertness of the mind result. And those are the advantages for this person. Is important at that level of spiritual pursuit. Yatavak kaya manasaha. Speech, mind and body subdued. So interaction with the object world is minimal. Even when suddenly there is a gush. So you are in solitary existence and then suddenly there are hundreds of people roaming around you. They are coming to you, wanting to talk to you. See, when you go to that Mani Baba, you absolutely want to spend a few minutes with him. You know, it's a wonder, right? This person has lived here. So let's say I'm in the first batch of trekkers who has reached the Pone after the winter. After the winter, the passes have opened and you go there and you are in the first batch and you're like, this person was here for the last 6 months on his own and you want to go see him, try and converse with him and he's standing there looking at you, you know, it's very, very funny. So, you know, in that kind of a situation where the interaction with the object world is minimal, even when there is disturbance. And this kind of a person is measured in speech, elegance in the demeanor. You will see that elegance in the person's demeanor. Movements are sparse. There is no fidgety, unnecessary movement is not there. And whatever movements are there are purposeful. There is some reason why that movement is there, of the hands or legs or whatever. Sparse but purposeful. And ever in communion with the Supreme Self. All this is possible only when Vak, Kaya, Manasaha, all of these are under control. See, perception, when we perceive through our sense organs, is the mind identifying with the projection of the mind. We have studied this earlier also, that whatever we perceive is what has been projected. So the mind identifying with what has been projected is perception. And action is seeking satisfaction of what has been projected. So there is a cup of coffee that is a projection of the mind, and that I perceive that there is this coffee. The nose perceives the smell, the sight perceives the vision, all of that. And then the mind wants it. That is action. What does this yogi need to do? Disciplining that action and regulating the perception. See, it's there. You cannot shut down the perception because it is there. So you have to regulate it. But action you can shut down through discipline. And these two, disciplining the action and regulating the perception, that then subdues the mind. That is what Bhagavan means by this. And when the mind is subdued, the body and the speech are automatically subdued. Dhyana yoga paro nityam, ever engaged in meditation. For this yogi, dhyana yoga is being completely, fully absorbed with that single thought of the Supreme. Continuous flow of that thought. The mind's the mind of the person is continuously thinking of Bhagavan all the time. So not necessarily that the person has sat down for meditation. No, all the time continuously thinking of Bhagavan. Diverting the mind away from sense objects and maintaining the steady flow of contemplation in the Lord. That is meditation on the go. So this kind of a person at this stage is always alert, always vigilant, and yet completely absorbed in that single thought. Vairagyam samupashritaha, taking refuge in dispassion. The essence of dispassion is not denial. Okay, it is not that there are sense objects, there are things out there in the world, not denying oneself. Mauni Baba doesn't shut his eyes and says, I refuse to see you. No, he does not do that. It's not denying the senses. It is not denying the sense objects. It is not self-denial or running away from these sense objects or from the world per se. But it is the self-discovery within. And what self-discovery? That these objects are not going to lead to my happiness. The ability to discriminate, viveka, between what is going to give me happiness and what is not going to give me happiness. And that the ephemeral is not going to give me happiness anyway. Forget about happiness, it may not even give me, or it will not even give me, for this kind of a sage, it will not even give me temporary joy. Momentary joy also is not going to be there. Fine, they are there. Acceptance of the fact that they are there, the cheerful acceptance, working with them, engaging with them, all of that will be there. But that realize, and this is beautiful, when you see these kind of sages, you actually sometimes notice that. And it's a thrill to notice that, because it's a fantastic one. It's like last time I was saying, no, Virat Kohli playing that kind of an inning, or Kapil Dev bowling like that magically. You see those magical performances. This is also a magical performance at a much bigger or higher level, because it's not controlling the bat and the ball, it's controlling the mind and the senses and the intellect. It's beautiful. You know, at that discovery that this ephemeral object is not going to provide me that permanent joy. That is Vairagya. And this person takes refuge in that Vairagya. Vimuchya, forsaking what? Ahankaram, Balam, Darpam, Kamam, Krodam, Parigraham. So, Ahankaram is egoism. Balam is power. Not strength, power here. We'll come to it. Okay. Darpam, pride. Kamam, desire. Krodam, wrath, bigger than anger. Parigraham, covetousness. So these, for normal people, they stem from that agency of being associated with action, right? That sense of I am doing, I, my, I want, and I do. That ensures that we are connected with all these aspects. But this person obviously cannot be connected because of that sense of, he is already, we just read, no, Tyagdiya has relinquished that sense of I and my, and the Kartatva also. All these are already there, so obviously not in that sense. But the risk for this kind of a person at that level of spiritual pursuit, there is still that contextual risk that you may get not attached, but connected to these aspects: egoism, power, pride, desire, wrath, covetousness. So how does that happen? See, the ego of spiritual achievement, knowing that I have become such a big spiritual achiever, being aware of that, having that knowledge that I have scaled this peak of spiritual achievement, and having that ego, I have done this. That is a risk for this person. Being mentally obstinate in this power of knowledge, that my way is the right way, because I have achieved this growth. So this is how it has to be. This is how everyone has to do for them to achieve this level of growth. For them to realize Brahman, you have to get here. That is also a risk for this level of Siddha. pride in one's level, one's spiritual capabilities, what you can do. Like we saw that, right? You look at the bird and it burns into ashes. That sage we saw in that story, right? So that level of Siddha, who has that spiritual capability to influence the object world, and having that pride that yes, I can control so many hundreds and thousands of people. I can magically, produce something, and so on and so forth, right? Anger, or actually wrath, that is stemming from all of these: ego, the obstinate quality, desire, pride, and anger that comes from that when things are not going. So when for that story that we saw, the bird dropped and I'm angry. The lady does not give me bhiksha, I'm angry. So it is possible that the person can slip, like we said, after climbing so much, can slip. We see so many number of accomplished yogis who have tremendous power and tremendous capability are imperfect in this sense. We see that all around us. And then aggrandizement, that covetousness, parigraham is aggrandizement. So all this power, wealth, reputation, all of that you accumulate, and then you thrive in it. You revel in it. And that also we see around us. So all this, Bhagavan says, what? Vimuchya. You have to forsake all of this. This way they will come. That will try and put you there. But you have to forsake. See, oftentimes you will see some of the very accomplished sages. For example, even Swami Chinmayananda, when he was alive, right? At that time, they don't seek any of these udolation. What's the word I'm looking for? Is that right? The word that I used? Like when people put you in a pedestal. But after their life, we make, murtis out of them and put it in a temple also. They would not have approved that. So, but some sages do approve also. So that is what is referred to as, in this, Vimuchya, Ahankaram, Balam, Darpam, Kamam, Krodam, Parigraham. Nirmamaha, with no feeling of me or mine. My is sense of owning something. This belongs to me. That is not there. Nirmamaha. Everything belongs to the Supreme. Nothing is mine. And even when there is an achievement, again, that Virat Kohli example that I gave in last satsang, right? You feel insignificant in the face of that achievement. That insignificance that is there after a superlative achievement comes from this lack of aspect of mine. I did not do anything. There was that Bhagavan, his power, this is him. He did it. The spiritual perfectionist, this person who has achieved this perfection, must experience inwardly and also exude outwardly this spirit of being insignificant. This person should not be that, yes, I am, the sage. That should not be there. I am Swami so-and-so, or I am, so-and-so. That should not be there. Insignificance. That is nirmamaha. Shantaha. When all this is there, there is that aspect of peace. The experience of the Supreme Self, and not allowing all these disturbances to affect that leads to unprecedented peace. That is the Shantaha that is referred to here, not the still calm of nature. So when you are in the still calm of nature, of course there is peace. But this is that experience of the Supreme Self within. That peace, the tranquility that arises from the fullness of experiencing the Self, unveiling the divinity within. That tranquility is the Shantaha, that bliss of unveiling the divinity within. And Bhagavan says, Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. Such a person, freed from all bonds, completely independent, liberated. This is the true liberation. Experiences the Supreme Self as it really is. Having such an experience, being steadfast in that experience, this person becomes capable or worthy of the state of Brahma. And having realized this state, then what happens next? That Bhagavan talks about in the next verse.
Brahmabhuta prasannatma
Brahmabhuta prasannatma
shochati na kankshati
na shochati na kankshati
tama sarveshu bhuteshu
tamash sarveshu bhuteshu
madbhaktim labhate param.
madbhaktim labhate param.
Brahmabhuta prasannatma na shochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labhate param.
Brahmabhutaha, having realized the state of Brahman, prasannatma, serene-minded, tranquil, na shochati na kankshati, neither shochati in grief, nor na kankshati in ecstasy. Sarveshu bhuteshu, considering all beings, samaha, the same, labhate, attains, param, supreme, mad bhaktim, devotion to me. So Bhagavan is saying, having realized the state of Brahman, serene-minded, neither in grief nor in ecstasy, considering all beings the same, attains supreme devotion to me. See, after attaining the Brahman, attains supreme devotion to me. Brahma Bhuta, having realized the state of Brahman. This means attaining that understanding, that purified understanding of the nature of the pure Supreme, the ultimate Supreme Self. What did Bhagavan describe that as? Supreme consummation of knowledge. Nishtha jnanasya yapara. Having realized that Brahman, prasannatma. See, the supreme goal of knowledge results in a serene mind. Once attaining that supreme goal of knowledge, that calmness and the tranquility automatically gets into the mind. That prasannatma. And that prasannatma is neither there is any grief nor there is any ecstasy. Na shochati, na kankshati. Something nice happens, you are not ecstatic. Something problematic happens, you are not in grief. Why? Because of that experience of that Supreme. Considering all being the same. Sama sarveshu bhuteshu. Why? Because you experience the Supreme, you think everything is that Supreme. The Supreme is there in all beings. That is why everything is the same. Such a person, mad bhaktim labhate param, attains supreme devotion to me. So Bhagavan has said that he is the supreme consummation of knowledge. And Bhagavan has also said that one who realizes his state attains supreme devotion to him. So, people talk about jnana and bhakti. There is a lot of debate that goes on about jnana and bhakti. And there are various schools of thoughts that put jnana as the superior and other schools of thought that put bhakti as superior. So these statements of Bhagavan can be read to suit. You want to put bhakti superior, you can read it in that manner. You want to put jnana superior, you can read the statement, interpret these beautiful verses that Bhagavan is speaking, the poetry, can be interpreted nicely to call either bhakti superior or jnana superior. Bhagavan didn't call any of these superior. He has not said this is superior or that is superior. He has made two simple statements here, that's all. One, he has said the supreme consummation of jnana is him. And the other, he has said that realizing the state of Bhagavan, that supreme Brahman, the one who realizes, develops supreme devotion towards him. So what does this mean? If ever you have to interpret, I would like to interpret it in this way, that he, Bhagavan, is the final goal of knowledge and he is the final goal of bhakti, devotion. So both, final goal of knowledge and final goal of devotion. See, Rajaji said, and I've quoted this, I think this is probably the one that I've quoted maximum time in our satsang, okay? I love this actually, from the time I was a kid I've been. So he said, and I quote, the way of devotion is not different from the way of knowledge or jnana. When intelligence matures and lodges securely in the mind, it becomes wisdom. When wisdom is integrated with life and issues out in action, it becomes bhakti. Knowledge, when it is fully mature, is bhakti. If it does not get transformed into bhakti, such knowledge is useless to itself. To believe that jnana and bhakti, knowledge and devotion, are different from each other is ignorance. If Sri Adi Shankara himself, who drank the ocean of knowledge as easily as one sips water from the palm of one's hand, sang in his later years hymns to develop devotion, it is enough to show that jnana and bhakti are one and the same. Unquote. See, once there was this tremendous storm and all of humanity went into hiding, hid itself in safety, obviously, to escape from the storm. No one was to be seen anywhere. Everyone was securely hidden. Only jnana and bhakti were out in the open. They were in different places but facing the ferocity of the storm. Seeking shelter desperately, they stumbled simultaneously into a temple. And in that temple, the roof was there, but there were no walls. Everything had come down, crumbling. And the storm was lashing in from every direction. Having nowhere to go, just that temple for safety and security, and with the storm coming in from all directions, they came closer and closer and closer to each other. And then they found that in the center of the temple, there was this idol of Sri Krishna. And both of them went and hugged the idol of Sri Krishna and sat down there, hugging, protecting themselves from the storm. As soon as they did that, they felt a humongous third presence. And suddenly God appeared. Both jnana and bhakti had the same thought. Jnana is thinking, how come now I did so much of jnana yoga, so much of learning, and at that time you didn't come. Bhakti is thinking, how come now I did so much of bhakti, so devoted to you, at that time you didn't come. Now we are only sheltering from the storm. At that time you have come. How is this? Bhagavan said, you both are together at last. So jnana and bhakti are one and the same. See, normal life, we are, perceiving, we are going through our, pursuing, our interest. What we want to pursue, we pursue. And we have our own opinionated approach to pursue what we pursue. In spiritual pursuit, we have an opinion about jnana, we have opinion about bhakti, we have opinion about all of these things. And then when life storm, when trouble hits us, at that time, we just hug Krishna. Jnana, bhakti, everything together. The knowledge that we are hugging Krishna and the devotion to that Krishna is the same. So the goal of this yogi's knowledge is Bhagavan. And in that Bhagavan, this yogi is devoted. And by devotion, the yogi comes to know him. So it's that cycle. And then what happens? That Bhagavan says in the next verse.
Bhaktya mam abhijanati.
Bhaktya mam abhijanati.
Yavan yaschasmi tattvataha.
Yavan yaschasmi tattvataha.
Tato mam tattvato jnatva.
Tato mam tattvato jnatva.
Vishati tadanantaram.
Vishate tadanantaram.
Bhaktya mam abhijanati. Yavan yaschasmi tattvataha. Tato mam tattvato jnatva. Vishate tadanantaram.
Bhaktya, through devotion, abhijanati, one comes to know fully, mam, me. Yaha, who, cha, and, yavan, what, asmi, I am, tattvataha, in reality. Jnatva, knowing, mam, me, tataha, thus, tattvato, in truth, or tattvataha, in truth. Vishate, one enters. Tad, that. Antaram, anantaram, forthwith. So Bhagavan says, through devotion, one comes to know me fully, who and what I am in reality. Knowing me thus, in truth, one enters that forthwith. So Shankaracharya has said in Viveka Chudamani, he says, Bhakti alone, and I quote, Bhakti alone is the ultimate among all the various collection of means of liberation, unquote. This is an English quote. Shankaracharya said, Moksha Karana Samagriyan Bhaktireva Gariyasi. Samagriyan is collection of what? Moksha Karana. Collection of all the reasons for moksha. In all those collection, Bhaktireva Gariyasi, only Balon, Eva, only Bhakti, Gariyasi is the greatest. Through such devotion, this kind of devotion, one comes to know me fully. Bhaktya Mam. Abhijanati, know me. My essence, my nature, who and what I am in reality. Yavan Yaschasmi Tattvataha. My attributes, my glories. Remember Vibhuti Yoga? See, Arjuna is seeing Sri Krishna in front of him. And Bhagavan also showed Arjuna is Vishwarupam. Right? So, but Bhagavan, what he's saying now is not what you are looking at me. Not the Vishwarupam that I showed you. Neither. Only with that Bhakti, Arjuna, you will come to know me as I am in reality. Fully, know me fully, abhijanati. And yaha yavan, who am I, what I am, tattvataha in reality. Not through the eyes, not through the, not through the eyes, through the mind. Sight requires eyes, vision requires the mind. So through this bhakti, through the devotion, that experience that you get, that experiential aspect, that is bhakti. Tataha, thus, tataha is thus, knowing me in this manner, not by sight, by that thought, only through devotion. Not just having learnt about me, read about me, not having seen me with the vision, not having experienced even if it is Vishwarupam, but having known me fully through devotion. See, devotion is love for Supreme. The love that we have for the Supreme is devotion. And love is measured by the degree of identification of the lover with the beloved. So in this case of the seeker with Bhagavan, the degree of identification. So this kind of a devotion, and this kind of a devotion is nothing but complete cessation of that I-ness and my-ness, complete cessation of ego, and complete identification with the Supreme. So one's thoughts are continuously flowing like that Shirodhara oil flow, continuously, without disruption, uninterrupted flow. My guru, he quotes Swami Advayananda ji. He says, Yatra yatra mano yati, tatra tatra samadhayah. Wherever the mind, yatra yatra mano yati, wherever the mind travels, tatra tatra, there it is absorbed in the Lord. Narendra, Swami Vivekananda, before he became Swami Vivekananda, he has famously asked, we have all read about it in, even when we read Amar Chitra Katha comic, right? He asked Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, have you seen God? And the response was, I see God more clearly than I see you. Meaning, I see you. But in that seeing, I see God. Yatra yatra mano yati, tatra tatra samadhaya. So this is also referred to as sahaja samadhi. See, natural absorption. We have read about savikalpa samadhi, where absorption with thought. And we have read about nirvikalpa samadhi, absorption, thoughtless absorption, without any thought. Sahaja samadhi is natural absorption, with or without thought. One thought or multiple thoughts, whatever it may be, ever abiding. That is sahaja samadhi, naturally abiding. And Bhagavan says, Vishate tadanantaram, enters me forthwith. Bhagavan uses the term tad, that. He doesn't say enter Vishate mam anantaram. He says Vishate tadanantaram. What one has known through devotion, that one enters. This means that through these efforts of the seekers, through Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, over a period of time, the veil of the Supreme Self, it goes away. and it gets, the supreme divinity gets unveiled. The identification with the body, mind and intellect vanish or dropped or tyaga, and the identification with the supreme Bhagwan is 100%. That kind of a vishate tadanantaram, that's what it means. And this essentially results in the steady unfoldment of the divinity within. And that leads to understanding the beauty of Bhagwan, the attribute of Bhagwan, the nature of Bhagwan, the glory of Bhagwan, all of that as he is in reality. Like he says, who am I? What I am. And at that stage, this seeker enters Bhagwan. Again, this concept of enters me, that is also is variously interpreted. Okay. And I must apologize, I must say with due apologies to Guru Parampara. You know, in my opinion, this is as much as jnana and yoga that we talked about, right? This is the result of being mentally obstinate, that we studied about that power, right? That balam, that power of knowledge gives this power of mental obstination. As per one's understanding and as per one's followership. At the level of our current spiritual growth, these discussions are distractions. They are impediments. They're actually, you know, it's like going a hurdle race, not a straight. You can run a straight 100-meter race or you can do hurdle race. These are unnecessary hurdles at this stage of where we are. And if we are at that stage of Jivan Mukta, this super achiever, this perfectionist that Bhagavan has taught us about, then does it matter? Is it relevant? Once you are on the verge of being a Jivan Mukta or you are actually a Jivan Mukta, there it doesn't matter. Now it is an impediment, there it doesn't matter. So why get into all of that? In Hanumanta Vibhuti, Lord Rama asks Hanuman to describe their relationship. And Hanuman responds, Deha Buddhya Dasoham, Jiva Buddhya Tvamam Saha, Atma Buddhya Tvamevaham, Iti Me Nishchayat Mati. From the perspective of the body, I am your servant. From the perspective of the soul, I am part of you. From the perspective of the self, I am you. This is my confirmed belief. How does it matter from what perspective? It is ultimately Bhagwan. And how this, you know, this epitome of devotion, Hanumanji, how he lived, how he attained, that is how realized souls, that is how people who are worthy of attaining that Brahman and thereby attaining that Brahman, they live life like Hanuman. And that we will see in the next satsang, how they live life, what they should do. Bhagavan will talk about that. Hari Om, Shri Krishna. We'll repeat the verse.
Today's verses, chapter 18, 50 to 55. Siddhim prapto yata brahma tatapnoti nibodhame samaseniva kaunteya nishta jnanasya yapara buddhya vishuddhya yuktaha dhrityatmanam niyamya cha shabdadin vishayam tyaktva ragadveshau vyudhasya cha vivittasi vilagvashi yatavakaya manasaha dhyana yoga paro nityam vairagyam samupashritaha ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodam parigraham vimuchya nirmama shantaha brahma bhutaya kalpati Brahma bhuta prasannatma na shochati na kankshati samasarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labhati param bhaktya mama vijanati yavanyaschasmi tattvataha tato mam tattvato jnatva vishate tadanantaram. Om asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om purnamada purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ। श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ।
Hari Om. Thank you. Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. Any thoughts?
I have a question.
Yes, I can't. Who?
There's a
Yeah. Who? Radhika. Yeah.
there's a power. There is no power. So
No problem. Yeah, sorry. I couldn't recognize your voice.
okay. The question is, you mentioned Vak, Kaya, Manasa. It has to be under control. And for me, it seems like a huge task, as there's so many variables, attached to all of it. What could be done in small or simple steps to kind of start off?
That's it, done? That's the question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. By the way, I mean, if we have to go, what could be done in small steps? Go back in chapters in Bhagavad Gita and, follow what has been taught. That is what we should do, because all of this small, medium, large steps, everything has been explained. That said, see what we are talking about subduing in this case. Subduing. So Radhika, your question is at a different. What should I? Okay, for lack of better word, your question is pertaining to a different level of spiritual progress. What we studied today is at a different level of spiritual progress. You are talking about it is so difficult to control speech, control mind, control body. Okay, here Bhagavan is talking about subduing. So this is for the perfectionist. You are talking about us, the normal day-to-day life. How do we control? So here in this chapter, in this verses, you will not find the answer to that. That is why I said you have to go back and see for our level what we have to control. But for our level, what we have to control, yeah, Karma Yoga, number one, whatever you do, okay, anything that you do, don't control, don't try to control, don't try to subdue, just dedicate it to Bhagavan. Automatically that control will come. That is the simple answer. The complicated or long answer is, please go back and study. There are so many points, we'll take 100 satsangs to finish. But simple answer is, whatever you do, dedicate it, Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. Automatically that control will happen. Whenever you are not, see, I'll tell you this, I must confide. I'm learning, I'm talking about it, which is a great experience for further learning. I find that when I'm sitting and doing Bhagavad Gita, when we are talking in satsang, when I'm preparing for the satsang, when I'm reading just like that, or when I'm thinking about it, when I'm thinking about some verses, okay, when I'm reciting chapter 15, because you should recite, it's a shastra and we should recite, that time Ishvara Arpana Buddhi is there. But when I'm having my coffee, when I'm fighting with somebody, when I'm instructing some worker to do something, that time there is zero Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. Okay. Later on, I realized, oh my God, at that time it was not there. Bhagavan was not there. And at that time, neither is the body controlled, neither mind is controlled, nor speech is controlled. If we can practice, Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, if we can practice dedicating whatever we do to Bhagavan, that control automatically comes.
Okay, thank you.
That's my experience. Whenever I've dedicated to Bhagavan, control has come. Whenever I fail to dedicate to Bhagavan, there's no control. That's a simple answer.
just a continuation. So when you say you're dedicating it to Bhagwan, so in a way I'm understanding it has to be a bit like Sattvic.
Huh? Bit
It has
like?
to be like Sattvic way of doing things for you to be able to dedicate.
No, I'm just saying simple. When you are doing whatever you are doing, think about your favorite Bhagwan. No? If Krishna is your favorite, think about Krishna. If Rama is your favorite Bhagwan, think about Rama. If Durga is your favorite Bhagwan, think about whatever you're doing, just think about that higher power and do what you're doing. You forget about Satvik, Rajasic, Tamasic.
Okay, I mean, I understand that. Let's say I'm being a bit aggressive about something, and that doesn't even sound right for me to dedicate.
See, when you dedicate to Bhagwan, when you dedicate to, please understand, Arjuna, what is he going to do after Bhagavad, after a few more verses? What's he going to do?
I don't know.
He's going to kill.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. After a few more verses, he's going to go and kill. It has to be Rajasic, no?
Okay. Okay.
But the point here is that it will be, what did Bhagavan say? How do you attain perfection? You attain perfection by performance of duty, Swadharma. That is how you attain perfection. And if that Swadharma is Rajasic, so be it. Swadharmo Shreyan Vigunaha. So that is what we have to do.
Okay.
But when we do it thinking about Bhagavan, it will be Swadharma, it will be in the right manner. Even something as big as killing will be in the right manner. It will be aligned to the principles of Dharma.
Okay.
That is the biggest teaching after all this.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. That was a very good question, actually. A really good question. That's what we all struggle with.
Yeah, because when it comes to a point where it is chanting or doing puja, there's nothing very, I would say, that it's not agitating in any way. It's very, it's nice while doing all this. But the struggle comes only when there is something that has to be dealt in a certain way, and which is definitely not very pleasant, or it cannot be conducive or whatever. In that case, I had a question, and how can I'm scolding someone, what can I dedicate to this? That's what I had in mind.
Yep. Any other thought, comments, questions? Diksha, very nice to see a short glimpse of you. Traveling as usual, huh?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's good to see everybody back. Today I was like, I was quite free, so I think I should be, there in this session. So, yeah.
Okay, any other thought, comment, question? Okay, if nothing else, then we'll meet next satsang next Saturday. Thank you. Hari Om.